about to begin on our Relearn packet for those students who need it, and there is nothing wrong if you need it. Let's just get this thing straightened out and learn what misunderstandings we have from the past and also in this chapter that we can straighten out. Now, all the Relearn packet is you only need to do the sections that you struggled with. So prior to this, there was a section here, I'll scroll up to it right here, that talked about how many you got wrong. So you need to identify which sections you need to do according to what I wrote here. And then each of the sections, all right, this section, or I'm sorry, each of these parts is divided into three sections. Here's section A. If we scroll or turn to your next page, there's sections B and C, and then we start a new part. In every case, I am going to do section A, and these are the exact questions from your test. Then you will do section B, and only, listen carefully, only section B. Then I want you to show it to me, and I want to see it, and I want to make sure you're doing it correctly. Then I will sign off on it, and you'll go do section C. Now, if you need to do three parts, you can watch all the videos for the three parts, watch all the section A's, and take notes while you're watching section A's. Then do all the section B's, show me all the section B's, and then go do all the section C's. Once you're done with all of the parts of the Relearn packet you need to get done, you're then ready to take a retest. Okay? So, without any further ado, here is the first section, section A of part 1, and I want to go through and talk about what kinds of questions, mistakes were made on this particular test, what I saw done. So, the first thing is to find f of -4. Now, for each of these problems, there's functions f, g, h, and so on and so forth. To find f of -4 means I'm going to take the -4 and it becomes the input. Remember, when I really read this, f says it takes the input, multiplies the input, because the x is the input, multiplies the input by 3 and subtracts 4. So, f of -4 will equal 3 times -4 minus 4. 3 times -4 is -12 minus 4, and that is -16. So the answer to the first one is -16. To be honest with you, kids really got that right. I don't think anybody missed it. Next up, g of x equals, and this is not 23, that's just a problem with an older version of Word. It's 2/3 x plus 1. So this is going to become 2/3 of 9 plus 1. Now, here's where some kids got this wrong. If you are going to do this in the calculator and use the fraction 2/3, you must use a parenthesis, 2, then the divided by button, 3, then another parenthesis. So if you're going to use a calculator, every single fraction, every single time goes in a parenthesis. That's also true of negative numbers, which I think is going to lead to a problem on number 3, which we'll get into in a minute. So if you use a calculator, parenthesis, 2 divided by 3 parenthesis, times 9 plus 1, it will give you the correct answer. If you didn't use a calculator, 3 goes into 9 3 times, 2 times 3 is 6, 6 plus 1 is 7. Now, my experience is that though I say this every year multiple times, kids don't really understand the significance of this until they actually mess it up on a test. H of -2. When I write this out, this has to become -2 squared plus 4 times -2 minus 5. And this is the killer part of this. If you don't put the -2 in parentheses here, look, there's a huge difference between this. On the bottom one here, the calculator interprets this to mean -2 times -2, which is 4. The calculator correctly interprets the top one to mean 2 squared, then negated, which is -4. So if you don't use the parentheses here, now what's happening is your calculator is saying square the 2, then negate it. But if you use the parentheses, then it's doing it correctly, because this says take the input and square it. So that means you got to square the whole -2. So this is 4, and then 4 times -2 is -8 minus 5. And that's 4 and -13, which is -9. Extremely important. If there's one thing you're going to take note of so far, that we've learned from numbers 2 and 3. Fractions and negatives, if you're going to put them in a calculator, input with parentheses. Very important to input those guys with parentheses. Now, J of 1. And notice, when I make a test, I try to expose every deficiency that you have. This was regular x squared, this is negative x squared. So this time in the calculator, it's a positive number, you don't need to put it in parentheses. So you can just type in negative 1 squared plus 2 times 1. And you could even do that on your own here. 1 squared is 1, negate its negative 1, plus 2 is positive 1. And then k of 1 is going to be 3x squared minus 4, so that becomes 3 times 1 squared minus 4. What I'm looking at here is, do you realize that you have to do the exponent first? Square the 1, that's 1, times 3 is 3, and 3 minus 4 is negative 1. So once again, the biggest mistakes in numbers 1 through 5. Did you put the fraction in a parenthesis? Do you put, when you input a negative, do you put that negative in a parenthesis? Those are the keys. Do you realize that this means square it, then negate it? Square, then negate. Do you realize here, square, then times by 3? That's the order of operations. Those are the big things that I saw wrong with numbers 1 through 5. And by the way, that's what every algebra teacher in the state of New York sees wrong all the time on these. Okay, so now I'm going to go make the next video in the lesson, and we'll get that started in just a moment.